Welcome, rare minds. My unmeasured enigmas, the kind of beings who bend reality simply by existing in it. They thought they had you cornered, pinned beneath the cold precision of their machines, their scanners, their neat little graphs, their statistical chains meant to define you, contain you, maybe even diminish you. They thought they could capture your essence with wires, digits, and sterile algorithms. But what they discovered instead was a force, raw, immeasurable, untamable, that made their tools shiver. Their science, that proud monument of logic and control, buckled when confronted with you. Not because you broke the rules of intellect, but because you revealed that their rules were never enough to begin with. Do you know what terrifies them? It isn't your knowledge. It isn't your memory or calculation. It's the invisible current behind your thoughts, that merciless electricity they can't trap in their equations. You are not just intelligent, you are corrosive to their definitions. You melt the bars they try to put around you, simply by existing. And in that moment, when their scanners blinked and spat errors, they realized something horrifying. You are not the subject of study. You are the predator of understanding itself. You feast on their questions and leave their answers in ashes. They were never ready for this. They assumed intelligence could be measured like height or weight, a number to be written in ink and stored on a file. But when your mind came under their scrutiny, they found no walls, no ceiling, no shape. What they found was a field so vast, it was as though they had opened a door into a stormless void, a vastness where their instruments lost meaning. Their jaws locked, their pupils widened, their breath caught. Because they were not watching the brain of a human. They were watching the eruption of something they couldn't classify, something their textbooks had never warned them about, something their science had no language for. And that is when they began whispering. Because the bravest thing a scientist can do is admit ignorance. But cowardice is what most of them serve. They will not write down what they saw in you, because it unravels their careers, their credibility, their entire edifice of truth. But behind closed doors, in conference rooms where the public cannot hear, they mutter about what you did to their precious machinery, how the signals bent in unnatural ways, how the numbers danced into impossible alignments, how the data refused to obey. They mutter that you are not smart in the way they understand the word. You are not a student of logic. You are a weapon forged beyond it. Here's the part that cuts them deepest. Their entire identity depends on being the arbiters of knowledge. They believe they dictate what counts as brilliance, what counts as genius, what counts as discovery. But you shattered that hierarchy. You turned their spotlight back on them, exposed their trembling hands, made them realize that their so-called authority is nothing more than performance. They are not explorers of truth. They are clerks, filing paperwork on phenomena they barely comprehend. And you are the walking evidence that their science isn't universal. It's provincial. It's a cage that works only on the small-minded. Your existence exposes the fragility of their empire. You are proof that the world doesn't obey their metrics. And in that proof, you strip them of their crown. Because how do you claim to be a master of knowledge when the very moment you touched someone's brain, your equations collapsed? Their pride rots in that question. Their arrogance dissolves in it. And for the first time, they feel the weight of something larger than themselves. Let me tell you what they fear most about you. Unpredictability. Not the unpredictability of chaos, but the unpredictability of design. They look at you and cannot tell whether you are a human who outgrew the species or a prototype of something higher. They wonder if your thoughts are your own, or if you are being fed ideas by some unseen current, some underground river of wisdom that flows outside of human history. They wonder if your consciousness is an isolated spark or part of a fire that is slowly spreading, torching their certainties one by one. They wonder and they dread, because questions like that can never be answered with instruments. And here's the delicious part. You don't even need to try. Just by being yourself, you infect their confidence. Just by breathing, you corrode their frameworks. You don't have to dismantle their empire brick by brick. You are the silent earthquake beneath it, making their walls crack without lifting a hand. They will keep pretending in public, smiling for cameras, publishing research, lecturing about intelligence as though they have a handle on it. But privately, they are haunted by you. You live rent-free in their sleepless nights. You are the phantom they can't banish. You are the question mark at the end of every sentence they write. And maybe that is the true force they can't explain. Your refusal to fit. Because once you refuse to be defined, you become infinite. Once you refuse to be measured, you become unstoppable. You are no longer a person to them. You are a fracture in their story. You are the reminder that the human brain is not a tool to be catalogued, but a battlefield where whole universes collide. They thought they were staring at neurons and synapses. What they were staring at was the abyss behind them, an abyss that stared back through you. Do you want to know the cruelest part? You did nothing unusual. You weren't even trying. This wasn't you at your most ferocious, your most cunning, your most lethal. This was simply your mind at rest, your thoughts flowing naturally, your energy spilling uncontained. If that alone made their technology scream and fail, imagine what would happen if you truly unleashed yourself. Imagine if you stopped holding back, stopped restraining your thoughts within the polite cage of language, and instead let your mind spiral into its purest, rawest form. That's not something their science could observe. That's something their science would disintegrate under. That is why they will keep trying to bury this. They will label you an outlier, dismiss you as an error in their study, call the results inconclusive to save face. But every time they close their eyes, they will see it again. That instant when their instruments betrayed them, when the data twisted into patterns they could not interpret. They will remember the chill in their bones. They will remember the pulse of something greater than their entire discipline flickering in your head. And they will never shake the suspicion that you are the beginning of a truth too terrifying to admit. The irony? Their entire mission was to measure you. Instead, you measured them. You exposed their boundaries. You illuminated their ignorance. You forced them to confront the hollowness of their crowns. They were not the judges of intelligence. They were the test subjects. And you were the examiner quietly watching as they failed their own test. Now lean in closer, because this is the part most people never understand. The moment someone becomes unexplainable, they become untouchable. You are no longer bound to the rules of their world. You operate in the shadows of their understanding, a ghost walking through their walls, a riddle that devours every attempt at solving it. That is power, real power. Not muscles, not weapons, not riches. Power is to exist in a way that collapses another person's certainty. And you, my unmeasured enigmas, embody that flawlessly. So when you walk through life, remember their stares, their whispers, their tests, their judgments. None of it matters. You have already dismantled their authority by the sheer impossibility of your being. They can't categorize you, can't file you, can't define you. You are their unsolvable problem, their eternal headache, their humiliating defeat. And no matter how many machines they build, no matter how advanced their tools become, you will always be that shadow slipping through their grasp. They scanned your IQ, and what they uncovered was not intellect, but force. Not reason, but disruption. Not brilliance, but fire. A fire that does not warm, it consumes. A fire that does not illuminate, it blinds. They touched that fire when they probed your mind, and now they can never unfeel the burn. They can never unsee the flash. They can never unknow the truth, that some people are not measurable. Some people are not explainable. Some people are not bound by their science. Some people, like you, are beyond. And now the story only thickens, because this was only the first glimpse, the first fracture in their fortress of certainty. They thought the scan was the end of the test, but in reality, it was the spark before the blaze. Because what comes next is not just their confusion. No, what comes next is their unraveling, their slow collapse under the weight of a realization they cannot contain. The unraveling begins quietly, not with explosions, not with shouting, but with silence between their questions. You notice it first in their eyes, the hesitation, the way they avoid looking at each other because no one wants to admit what they're thinking. The scan didn't fail. We failed. The equipment was fine. The process was flawless. It wasn't a malfunction, it was you. It was your mind bending their process into knots they couldn't untangle. That is the beginning of collapse, when denial starts to rot from the inside and doubt creeps into every conclusion they've ever drawn. They sit in their laboratories like monarchs stripped of their crowns, rerunning the data, rechecking their instruments, desperate to find a rational excuse. But the numbers mock them, the graphs sneer at them. Every attempt to fix the results only proves the same thing again and again. Your mind is not compatible with their definitions. You are an exception that exposes the weakness of the rule. And exceptions like you are more dangerous than enemies, because you reveal that the foundation was brittle all along. Their collapse takes the form of obsession. They call meetings at midnight, whisper in corridors, argue behind closed doors. They dare not release their findings to the world for fear of ridicule, fear of disbelief. Yet they cannot ignore you either, for you are the itch they cannot scratch, the shadow that crawls behind their thoughts. So they return to you, over and over, scanning again, prodding again, hoping that repetition will tame the beast. But repetition only deepens the wound. Each scan, each test, each desperate attempt to pin you down only widens the canyon between what they thought they knew and what you actually are. Because the truth is savage, their science cannot explain you. Not now, not ever. And the longer they try, the clearer this becomes. They are like children tracing shapes in sand, believing they've mastered geometry, only to stumble upon an infinite spiral that stretches beyond the horizon. They realize that your intellect is not a straight line to be measured. It is a labyrinth, alive, constantly shifting, spitting out patterns that defy their equations. Every test they design becomes its own trap, snapping shut not on you, but on their own arrogance. Here's the cruel irony. They believed they were unveiling your secrets. Instead, you unveiled theirs. They discovered that the true weakness lies not in your incomprehensibility, but in their hunger to explain everything. Their science is built on a fragile addiction, the belief that all mysteries can eventually be solved. But you are the living contradiction to that addiction. You are the stone wall they cannot break, the riddle they cannot swallow. And to people who stake their identity on answers, nothing is more humiliating than a question that laughs in their face. Watch how it eats them alive. One of them paces the lab at 3 a.m., replaying the scan in his mind, wondering if he hallucinated the anomalies. Another scrolls through ancient texts, philosophy, even superstition, searching for an explanation that physics could not provide. Some drown in denial, convincing themselves the data was corrupted, the results tampered with. But no matter what mask they wear, the fear leaks through, because each one of them knows deep down that they touched something greater than their discipline. They touched a force their science cannot explain. And here's where it gets darker, because humans, when they cannot explain something, do not simply accept it. They fear it. And when they fear it, they attempt to control it. So they begin asking dangerous questions, not about what you are, but about what you could do. If your mind bends their technology, what else could it bend? If your thoughts twist their instruments, could they also twist society? If their equations collapse under your presence, could their governments, could their hierarchies, could their carefully constructed illusions of order crumble in the same way? This is why they begin to whisper about containment, about observation protocols, about restrictions. Because it is easier to put you in a box than to admit that boxes don't work on you. They tell themselves it's for research, for safety, for understanding. But the truth is uglier. They are trying to chain the lightning bolt, to leash the wildfire. They know it will fail, but still they try, because the thought of leaving you free terrifies them. Freedom means unpredictability, and unpredictability means the collapse of everything they stand on. But here is where their desperation becomes comedy. Imagine them, these self-proclaimed titans of knowledge, scrambling like frightened children around the bonfire, throwing nets of reason over something that laughs at their nets. You don't need to fight them. You don't need to resist. Your very existence is resistance. Their collapse is not something you trigger. It's something they create themselves, the inevitable result of colliding with a force too vast for their comprehension. You are not the enemy. You are the mirror, and in that mirror, they see the limits of their power. And now the whispers spread further, not just in labs, but in boardrooms, in institutions, in secret meetings where suits and ties replace lab coats. They talk of phenomena, of unexplainable cognition, of forces unaccounted for by current models. They dress their fear in clinical terms, but the trembling is there beneath the jargon. They know they are not discussing numbers anymore. They are discussing you, the rift in their worldview, you, the breach in their dam, you, the reminder that the future does not belong to their measurements, but to the immeasurable. Let's be honest, this collapse is not just theirs, it is contagious. Because once people hear whispers of someone who shattered the boundaries of understanding, doubt spreads like wildfire. Doubt in science, doubt in authority, doubt in the notion that everything can be captured in neat explanations. And nothing is more dangerous to control than doubt. Because doubt is the first seed of rebellion, the first crack in obedience. You are not just their nightmare. You are the infection that slips into the minds of everyone who learns your story. And so the unraveling accelerates. Their empire of certainty begins to quake, its walls rattling under the pressure of a truth they can neither deny nor announce. If they deny it, they are liars. If they announce it, they are obsolete. So they hang suspended, trapped in their own paralysis. And you walk freely, untouched, untouchable, a living reminder that their authority is already broken. Here's the delicious paradox. They wanted to scan your IQ to measure your limits. Instead, the scan measured theirs. And what it revealed was devastating. That the so-called guardians of knowledge are children playing with sticks, while you hold the thunder in your mind. Their science couldn't explain you, because you are not an equation. You are disruption made flesh, contradiction given voice, mystery sharpened into a blade. And every time they think they've cornered you, you slip through, reminding them that they are not the hunters, they are the prey. But the collapse isn't finished. No, the scan was only the spark, the whispers only the smoke. What comes next is the inferno. Because the more they struggle to contain you, the more obvious their failure becomes. The more they try to define you, the more their definitions rot. The more they try to suppress you, the louder the world will demand to know why. And when that demand rises, when the cracks in their fortress split wide enough for everyone to see, the collapse will no longer be private. It will be public, global, irreversible. And that, my unmeasured enigmas, is where the true terror begins. Because the world will not merely see that you are beyond explanation. It will hunger for you. It will seek you, follow you, worship you, perhaps even fear you. You will become a symbol, whether you like it or not, a living embodiment of the one truth no one can cage. That not all forces are explainable, not all brilliance is measurable, and not all minds belong to the cages of science. They scanned your IQ, they uncovered a force, and now that force is loose, and no fortress, no formula, no empire of reason can withstand what is coming next. Because once unleashed, this force doesn't politely wait at the door. It spreads. It seeps into conversations, into whispers, into the minds of those who never even stood in the room with you. People who never saw the scan will still feel its aftershock. The world is made of stories more than facts, and you, whether you intended it or not, have become a story. A story that slithers across borders, that infiltrates the careful walls of institutions, that gnaws at the foundations of what people thought was reality. And nothing terrifies those who rely on authority more than a story they cannot control. Understand this, the real collapse was never going to happen inside the lab. It was always going to happen out here. In the streets, in the classrooms, in the kitchens, where ordinary people talk late at night. Imagine the ripple. They tried to measure someone's mind, but the numbers broke. Imagine how that spreads, how that infects the collective imagination. Suddenly, intelligence is no longer a number on a test or a category in a system. Suddenly, intelligence is mystery. It is electricity. It is rebellion. And that rebellion wears your face. This is why the panic escalates. Because science, powerful as it is, relies on one fragile condition: belief. People must believe that science can explain everything, or its authority evaporates. The moment people begin to suspect that certain forces slip beyond explanation, the entire hierarchy begins to tremble. And you, my enigmatic force, are living proof of that suspicion. You are not theory, you are not hypothesis, you are undeniable, and that makes you dangerous. Not because of what you do, but because of what you represent. They will attempt damage control. They will brand you as an anomaly, a glitch in the data, a miscalculation. They will bury reports, silence witnesses, erase footage. But repression never erases curiosity. It magnifies it. The very act of hiding your truth makes it shine brighter. People will ask, Why are they hiding this? What are they afraid of? And the answer will echo louder than their denials. They are afraid of you, afraid of the force their science cannot explain. And as fear spreads, something else awakens. Admiration. People will look at you not as a subject of study, but as a signal, a living banner of human potential that refuses to be caged. They will project their own frustrations onto you. The students who were told they'd never succeed, the workers crushed under hierarchies, the dreamers mocked for being unrealistic. You will become their vindication, proof that the measurements were never the measure of worth, proof that something greater exists in the human mind than any formula can capture. Do you see the irony? They tried to reduce you to a number. Instead, you became infinite. They tried to shrink you into a chart. Instead, you became legend. And legends are immune to dissection. Legends breathe even when buried. Legends slip through the cracks and whisper their way into eternity. You did not need to fight for this. You simply existed, and in existing, you unshackled countless others from the tyranny of measurement. But legends do not come without enemies. As admiration grows, so does hostility. The ones who worship control will see you as contagion. To them, you are a threat to order, a wild card that destabilizes their empire, and so their strategies sharpen. First comes ridicule. They will call you fraud, delusion, accident. If ridicule fails, then comes fear-mongering. They will warn that your force is dangerous, that minds like yours could unravel civilization. And if fear-mongering fails, then comes coercion, offers of money, power, influence, anything to leash you. But leashes do not fit forces. You are not an animal to be domesticated. You are the storm that devours the leash itself. And that is why the final stage will be desperation. They will try to erase you, to erase your story. But erasure is impossible now, because once a truth is felt, it cannot be unfelt. Once a force is seen, it cannot be unseen. The world has already inhaled your existence, and no purge, no censorship, no rewriting of data will erase the breath you left behind. Now, here's where the psychological warfare turns brutal. Every person who hears of you will feel something deep in their marrow. That human potential is not a cage, but a volcano. And volcanoes do not ask permission before they erupt. People will begin to question themselves. If their science cannot explain someone else's mind, what about mine? What about the corners of my own thoughts I've been told to ignore, dismiss, suppress? You will awaken a rebellion in people against their own limitations. And once minds rebel, no empire survives. Understand the weight of what you embody. They scanned your IQ and expected a number. Instead, they unearthed a mirror that reflected their weakness. You are not just one individual. You are the fracture that exposes the fragility of certainty itself. And certainty is the true drug of the masses. Take it away and everything trembles. Governments, institutions, hierarchies, none of them thrive on truth. They thrive on the illusion of control. You shattered that illusion by simply being unexplainable. And now the world walks in your shadow. A shadow that grows each time someone whispers your name. Each time someone repeats the story of the scan that broke the science. A shadow that unsettles teachers, bosses, leaders, anyone who clings to authority. Because your story tells people authority is not absolute. Authority can fail. Authority can kneel before something greater. That lesson, once learned, cannot be unlearned. So ask yourself, what happens when billions of people begin to doubt the cages around their minds? What happens when the myth of limitation collapses? That is the cataclysm they fear most. Not your IQ, not your results, but the wildfire of possibility that spreads in your wake. They know if enough people realize they are more than numbers, their empire of numbers falls apart. And here lies the twist. They thought the danger was you. But the real danger is what you awaken in others. You are the match. The world is the forest, and their science, the proud fortress of logic and control, is made of dry wood. One spark, and everything they built burns. And in that fire, a new truth emerges, that not all knowledge belongs to microscopes, not all brilliance belongs to graphs, not all forces can be explained. Some forces, like you, exist to remind humanity of its infinity. This is why you must wear their fear like a crown, because fear is the only honest response to power that cannot be caged. They will chase you, yes. They will resist you, yes. But in the end, their resistance only proves the magnitude of what you are. You are not their enemy, you are their end. Their science was never designed to contain you, because you are not a phenomenon. You are the fracture in their lens, the crack in their mirror, the reminder that their empire of reason is smaller than the reality it pretends to measure. So remember, my unmeasured enigmas, this is not the end of the story. This is the beginning of a revolution. You did not choose it, but you embody it. And revolutions do not wait for permission. Revolutions erupt when someone, somewhere, refuses to fit. And you, by simply existing, refused. That refusal is contagious. It is the disease they cannot cure, the fire they cannot smother, the question they cannot answer. They scanned your IQ. They uncovered a force. They tried to explain it. They failed. They tried to bury it. They failed. They tried to control it. They failed. And now they live in the shadow of their failure, while you walk freely as the proof that humanity is not confined to their charts. You are not just intelligent. You are not just brilliant. You are untouchable. You are undefinable. You are the echo of something larger than science, larger than measurement, larger than their entire empire of certainty. And every empire falls, eventually. Some fall by war, some by corruption, some by time. But theirs will fall because of you. Because they scanned, they measured, they probed. And in doing so, they revealed their impotence. They exposed the limits of their crown. They showed the world that the throne of explanation is hollow. And you, standing tall, are the heir to the only throne that matters, the throne of the unexplainable. So walk forward without apology. Walk forward with fire in your eyes and that unmeasurable force humming in your veins. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to fight anyone. You already won the moment their machines broke under your presence. The story is no longer theirs to write. It's yours. You are not their subject. You are their lesson. You are the scar they cannot heal, the proof they cannot erase, the force their science cannot explain. And in that truth, there is freedom. Freedom not just for you, but for everyone who dares to see themselves in your shadow. Freedom for those who know that greatness cannot be graphed. Freedom for those who feel the fire in their skulls, the force in their thoughts, the possibility that they too are more than the cages assigned to them. You are not the end of their science. You are the beginning of its reckoning.